All right, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. Today is March the 30th, and it is 2 o'clock in the afternoon this fine Saturday. If you're in the Gulf Coast, it's beautiful, maybe a little overcast, but very nice outside. Of course, I have just gotten so wrapped up in this story about Sebastian Rogers and this 15-year-old going missing. This has been going on since, I believe, February the 25th, if I remember correctly. If I'm off on that date, excuse me. I think it was February the 25th. And it's been quite a roller coaster since that period of time. It is an incredible, most of these stories that end up blowing up on social media that capture the attention, hearts, and minds of all the people. Most of them, there's a dramatic element of mystery, right? That when you hear the story, you see the people involved, the mystery remains, that it seems like an impossible situation, that as the story is told, it's just highly unlikely. The story that we were told about Summer Wells, after a few days, everybody's having this dawning realization that this didn't happen as we were told. Like, we don't know what happened, but the way the story that was told by the people that were there, Candace and others, it just could not have unfolded as they said. Had the story unfolded in that manner, there would have been evidence, right? I don't mean evidence for who did it. I don't mean evidence to take to prosecute a person. I'm talking about evidence that the story as told is correct. And I think it is a certainty for Katie Proudfoot, Sebastian Rogers' biological mother, and Christopher Proudfoot, the stepfather. I think the story as told, so far the evidence just simply does not match. It's not there. They have taken from the very beginning, I believe, my opinion, they've taken a position that said Sebastian walked out of this house. Sebastian walked out. No shoes on his feet, but he had his glasses and he had a flashlight. Just walked out. Now, you have to wonder, it's a bit peculiar, this focus on no, he wasn't wearing any shoes. That's very odd. But maybe you think, well, maybe it's the fear that you would look for his, like, the type of tread that was on the bottom. Maybe that was why she says he wasn't wearing them, because she knew they wouldn't find the tread of that particular shoe. But more important than that, and perhaps this is something she does not know, more important than that, if he walks out of the house just his bare feet, do you know what he's leaving behind? He is leaving behind an absolutely, excuse me, an absolutely perfect trail for dogs, bloodhounds to follow. So we know now it's absolutely been, the police have point blank said it. The biological father of Sebastian has absolutely said it. No, that didn't happen. Katie, it didn't happen. Sebastian did not walk out of your house. That is absolutely not possible. Because if it were, Katie, if it were the reality, the truth, he walked out, no shoes on his feet, that trail of DNA would have been picked up instantly by bloodhounds or beagles, and you guys had both. And they did not pick up on a scent leaving the door of your house. They did not pick up a scent and follow it down the road to the retention pond. It did not happen. So we're right where we were with Summer Wells, or even with Kylie Rodney. The story told does not match what the police have collected, and yet you continue to repeat the same story. You have chosen your story, and you are sticking to it, like that old song, right? That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Well, as you stick to it, you look foolish, but I think looking foolish is the least of the troubles for Mr. and Miss Proudfoot. Looking foolish is a certainty. As you sit there and you say, no, he walked out of this house, no shoes on his feet, nothing in between his DNA and the ground upon which he walks, nothing. And yet, you bring in bloodhounds, you bring in beagles, sniffer dogs, tracking dogs. Magically, there's no scent. It's one of two things. Either that kid didn't walk out that door with no shoes on his feet, or somebody took a great amount of water and bleach and cleaned it up off of the sidewalk and the porch. And why in the world would you do that? No, I think we're to the point now that we begin to see what happened on February the 25th after you and Sebastian go alone to eat dinner. Alone. It's on camera. He just didn't return home. He either didn't return home, or someone strong enough to pick his body up and carry his body. One of the two. Occam's razor. The dogs can't find a scent anywhere around your home. A kid is walking around with no shoes on his feet. It's not real. Didn't happen that way. It's not even remotely possible. So I also find it very interesting that Katie, in some of the newer interviews that have been done, she led us to believe, look, Christopher Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot are the worst historians. They are very poor historians. And people, like Dr. John and Dr. G, people who are psychologists, forensic psychologists, they do evaluations and such. They know what this term is, poor historian. That sends red flags. Why are you misleading me? Why don't your words that you're telling me about this story, why does it not match documentation that we have, historical information that's proven true, or even evidence that's being collected on the ground? Where's the disconnect? So beyond a shadow of a doubt, and nothing more can be said, at least we know one thing for certain at this point today, March the 30th, 2024, we know that Christopher Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot are terrible historians. They contradict themselves and each other over and over and over and over and over. This couple has no problem lying. They don't mind if they lie. Not little white lies to, save someone from getting their feelings hurt. I'm talking about large, substantial lies, like accusing the man that you're divorcing from, the man that you've crawled on top of him in your drunken state and beat the crap out of him as he's stuck laying in the bed. The lies that you tell about him in your divorce decree don't match the evidence at that time. These are known liars, both Christopher and I don't even, according to my friend who is an attorney, I don't even have to worry about being sued saying that, because the good evidence is out there. The other story that changed, and there's simply no explanation for the changes that we heard, is the story about Sebastian being hit with the belt. It happened. And we know it happened out of the words of Christopher Proudfoot. And let me tell you something, big guy with the big belt and a little brain. If your next step, if the plan is to go, well, yeah, I lied a little bit, people were just coming down on me hard. Stop. At this point, your credibility is shot to hell. So stop just stop the nonsense. Because there's some real things now coming out. The reason that this information is important is this: the best predictor of future behavior is past performance. Let that sink in, Christopher Proudfoot. The best predictor of future behavior is past performance. And at this point now today, I am comfortable with the notion that you are an abuser. The reason that I'm comfortable with that idea is because you've now been directly accused publicly by two or more people, not people in the same family, people completely unconnected with one another. Two or more people have come out publicly with the stories of abuse that you visited upon them. Abuse so horrific. The kind of abuse that affects people, their neurological organization, so that they end up having trauma for the next 10 years. You did that. And your lies about how Seth knew this and Seth knew that and Seth did this and Seth did that. Oh, yeah. And why don't we just get Katie's damn lies out and read them out to the whole YouTube and TikTok community? Because that's important. How? Not one single solitary person, not one, has said that Sebastian was anywhere near Seth on the day or the night that he went missing. Nowhere near him. In fact, the information that was read about Seth to denigrate his reputation, I don't even know how it was even remotely relevant. Why would you even do that? This man has reached a point of exhaustion. He has been walking and searching and looking, not alone, not as a gesture for the cameras, not to mislead people. He's got his sheriff's office friends with him. He's got police officers in other counties that he has worked with that have been his friends for years. This is not a game. It is the amount of absurdity from taking this guy's Christopher Proudfoot and Katie and their abusive histories, documented by CPS, documented in a court of law, not pathetic, pitiful accusations about a man that's divorcing her ass because she's abusive. It's egregious. This whole situation is egregious. And the other part of this that has got me so angry and dismayed are these people that are following the searchers around and filming them and taking videos of them. People that threaten the lives of the Cajun Navy. They threaten the life of Seth. They threaten the life of searchers. Why? Why? You think JLR did? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. That man was on camera. He was searching with people. He was making friends with searchers. That's stupid. He made friends with Seth. He's got the trust of Seth. It's stupid. We know who's doing this. We know exactly who's doing this. The person with the most to lose. I said it before and I'll say it again. I don't believe that Barry Morphew, I don't think that he had any idea at all. I don't think he expected at all that the world was going to fall in love with Suzanne Morphew. I don't think he expected, not for a second, that people were going to show up in Colorado from around the country searching for that woman. I don't think he expected it at all. I think he thought, we are in this little know-nothing area of the country. Very few people know us. That the only people that I'm going to have to contend with is law enforcement. And I've made buddy with all them. And it's going to be in and out. And I'm going to be home free. And he never counted on this true crime community pressure, and which then placed a lot of pressure on corporate media, and then we were off to the races, right? And I think the same thing happened here. I think Christopher Proudfoot is used to being the little short big man. You know, the kind of man who buys a giant truck. He needs a step stool to get up in it. But once he's in it, get the hell out of his way. He is a big man. He never counted on people falling in love with Sebastian. He never counted on it. You want to know why? Because he hated Sebastian. He never expected that other people would feel protective of Sebastian, that they would want to do anything they could do to try to help him or his dad find him. He never counted on that because his whole world begins and ends with Christopher. He can't see past his nose, in my opinion. He's got to be completely dismayed at the amount of love that Sebastian has prompted. He has to be completely in shock. You know what I mean? So here we are. He did his first couple of interviews. Man, you could tell he was smug. He was important. He liked it. He liked all that attention. Ooh, it felt so good, didn't it, Christopher? And then it got a little uncomfortable because he began to realize that all these people in the YouTube and TikTok true crime community, these weren't just a bunch of people sitting around eating Doritos, looking for a story to listen to. He began to realize that these people were all people that at some time or another in their lives, they had been the victims of crimes, or they had lost loved ones. People in their own families had been killed or lost to violent crime. He began to realize, wait a minute, this is not just a bunch of gossipy busybodies. These are people that genuinely care. I'm in trouble here. And man, just like Barry Morphew, he has blamed anything and everything, anyone he can come up with, and it's all weak and it's all fake and there's nothing real about it. And we all felt it. We felt it in our soul. Now, there's a bunch of people on the internet now led by another weak little man as their fearless leader who decides, oh, I think we should go after the true crime people because I wanted to enter true crime and nobody would listen to me. And don't they know how educated I am? Don't they know that I'm a professor, how smart I am? I am a philosopher. I am so much better than all these people talking on YouTube. And yet, no one listened to this joker more than 2 or 3 times, except for people that really love virtue signaling. You listen to the little professor a few times and you're like, oh my God, this man's full of you know what? And he never could get his channel up and running, except for the virtue signalers. Don't speculate. My God, don't speculate. Only say the facts. Never say anything but the facts. Oh my God. Oh my God. Chicken Little, the sky is falling because you speculated. You're a bad, evil person because you speculated. Do you even know or understand how a police investigation works? Do you understand what the scientific process is? You collect a bunch of facts, you collect a bunch of data from multiple sources, and then you look at everything that's laying in front of you, and you begin to formulate hypotheses, or another word, guesses. Educated guesses. Guessing that is supported by known fact. Once you've collected good factual data from multiple sources, that's a very important part of this definition, collected from multiple sources. Once you've collected it, you lay it out. Oh my God, Martin, the bad actors. I got a feeling, Martin, me and you, we are bad actors, Martin. Wear that t-shirt. Okay. You collect factual information from multiple sources. You lay it out in front of you and use that to begin to build hypotheses or educated guesses that are backed by known fact. Or if you just want to use the word speculation, okay, because that word speculation that all of you virtue signalers love to use and throw out at certain members of this community, that word speculation, I got a different word for you. You want to know what the FBI calls it? Avenues of investigation. That is what they call it. It's still the same thing. Hey, AB, welcome, my friend. Good to see you. Avenues of investigation. Here's what we know. This is our starting point. Now let's follow what we know to the various possibilities, or in other words, hypotheses. Speculation is simply avenues of investigation. So all of you good actors that feel all warm and fuzzy because you're following your fearless little skinny-legged leader who is so impressed with who he is, which is a good thing because nobody else is impressed with who he is except you guys. And then you begin to attack people that are doing good things. The only thing I can figure is because you can't do it yourself. Maybe you can't do it yourself because you're stuck at home, because you can't get in your car and drive across the United States of America and start helping people search for lost children, or documenting and videotaping, or speaking to the investigators to find out what's going on. Maybe you can't do those things. Why not be glad that there are people who can do it? Why not? But that's not how you guys work. That's okay. But here we are, Christopher Proudfoot, the very tough guy who takes off his belt or takes the belt of the kid who's standing in front of him. And let's see if we can get this right. What was the first story? I admit it. I hit Sebastian. Okay, he's a 15-year-old kid. Can we talk about humiliation of a teenage boy, please? Thank you, Megan. Haven't been to Alive in a year or more. Good to see you. As a special education life skills teacher, this case makes me sick. I have seen this way too many times. Thank you, Megan. Completely agree with you. This is part of the reason why there is so much passion in this case with Sebastian Rogers, because we that work with these communities of people, of kids, we see the abuse. We see it. We see the tired, worn out, frustrated parents that just don't know what else to do. The stress comes because the step-husband, the husband or the stepfather or the stepmother of the child say, I don't want this. I don't want this. I wanted to be married to you, but I can't live with your son or your daughter anymore. I can't do this anymore. And then the pressure mounts, on the biological mother or father. And they're like, what is going to happen here? And it is these kids that become the target of domestic violence more times than any other family member. It's one of the reasons why we fight so desperately to get education out there about positive reinforcement. Because when you start hitting on a kid, and I don't care which kid it is, if you start hitting on a kid, you are the one in the middle of a temper tantrum. That is the truth. If you start beating on an animal, knocking a horse in the head, kicking your dog, you are having a temper tantrum. And that is the reality. You are not teaching. You are out of control with your emotions, and you are using a power differential to take it out on a little helpless kid. This kid, 15 years old, getting hit with a belt, I don't care if he's on the spectrum or not, that is humiliation. Those are the situations that help to create complex trauma. Repetitive re-traumatizing across a lifeline. And so Mr. Big, smarty pants here with the big truck. Mr. Smarty Pants said, oh, I'm a brash, direct man. Yes, you are. And you are the kind of man that makes people like me very uncomfortable when there's a missing child. Oh, I'll tell you how it is. I've got CPS cases in 2 states involving multiple children Is anyone paying attention? Is anyone listening to this? Why in God's name would you take the words of Katie Proudfoot, a woman who was standing beside this guy right here, this man? Why would you take her words written during a divorce and read it pointing the finger at Seth Rogers? He was nowhere to be found on the 24th, the 25th, the 26th. He had nothing to do with this. In fact, he was going to be taking full control of Sebastian. Sebastian was moving into his home in the coming days. Where have we heard that before? Very much like what was going on with Summer Wells. They were on a timeline. The hammer was about to fall. CPS was going to be at the house the next day to collect all the children. Isn't it weird? Has anybody seen a pattern of behavior here? These abusers, do you know why they abuse? It's power. They like the power. They enjoy, they get like a sexual thrill from being an overbearing, powerful person. To take a dog and hold them on the ground, not let them up. Scare them to death. Take a kid and drop them, 5 miles from the house in the middle of the dark and tell them to walk their ass home. Oh, by the way, take your shoes off. Make sure it hurts more. That'll teach them a lesson. Look at what a big shot I am. And here, take this little key ring flashlight so you'll know how to find your way. You imagine the fear of a kid with autism where that circumstance happened to them? This guy had some reason. There was something going on with him, something that he says in a forthright, almost proud way, I hit Sebastian. I asked Sebastian, where's your belt? He wasn't wearing it, which is why he got in trouble, because he was supposed to be wearing his belt and he didn't have it on. You see, I think Chris was probably having a bad day that day. He had a choice. He could either beat up on a 15-year-old with autism or he could kick the dog, and he kind of likes his dogs. So he says, where's your belt? Sebastian says, I'm not wearing it, which isn't unusual with these kids that have sensory, issues. Some of them won't even put on a pair of socks. They hate the way it feels between their toes. It's nothing to give punishment over. It's a sensory perceptual thing. It's okay. It's not odd. It's not weird. It's common. But he didn't have his belt on. Christopher says, go get your belt. This is true. He says this. He tells the interviewer this. He told him, go get your belt. He comes back, he takes the belt, and he hits a 15-year-old boy on the buttocks, over the pants. God, he's just disgusting. He's so disgusting because he doesn't know how inappropriate it is. But he hits the kid, and it's as if he's waiting on a medal of some sort, that he did a great thing. No, Sebastian didn't know why you were hitting him. He had no idea why you would do that. He's just absorbing it. The hate you felt, Christopher, is exactly what Sebastian said to himself. I'm hated. That's why I'm getting hit, because Mr. Chris, sir, hates me. That's why I'm getting hit, because Mr. Chris, sir, doesn't like me. He wasn't sitting around. This whole idea of if then, he's not sitting around going, oh, okay, well, I got spanked, so next time I better be sure, that I'm wearing. Do you know, you dumbass? Oh, I'm so mad. Do you know that it is common for kids that are high functioning autism, meaning their IQ is average or above, that they're very intelligent, but they have this social communication disorder. Do you know, Mr. Chris, sir, that many of these kids are not identified when they're 5 years old or 6 years old? Many of these kids are not identified until the curriculum at school becomes more abstract. When the lessons that are being taught demand a high level of abstract thought. At that point, then their grades just crater. And so the parents and their teachers are like, what is going on? This is so crazy. My child, who's been making straight A's through the whole school, career, now in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, it's just terrible. What's happening here? And so they begin testing, and then pretty soon it comes out. We're looking at autism. And anytime I do testing, I got to be careful what I say here because of the tests. There is a certain array. Okay, how do I want to say this? There's a certain, let me start over. When we do testing, we come up with multiple IQ scores, and they are different types of neurological performance. And most people are familiar with, what's your IQ score? The one single global score that's supposed to indicate whether you're smart or not. Okay. We get so much more than that one number. And very often, depending upon the array of scores that we get that have a higher level of discernment, we may completely throw out the full scale IQ. We may deem that it is not even an accurate instructive number because of the different abilities. One area, they may be very, very high, and then another area may be very, very low. So maybe they're great in reading, but they're awful in math, right? I'm really oversimplifying this. And so for people that do testing, when you reach a higher level of understanding, especially of some of the flagship testing kits like the Weschlers and whatnot, Woodcock Johnson, we know to look for a certain array of numbers where some will be high and some will be low. And if you see this pattern, that is a pattern that is statistically significantly correlated to people on the spectrum. I can look at a verbal IQ and then go and do testing for receptive IQ, nonverbal communication. And there is an array, there's a differential there that if nonverbal IQ is higher than the global verbal IQ or lower, then that is consistent with a diagnosis of autism because it is a neurological condition, correct? So the fact that Sebastian was only recently identified, a lot of people think, wow, that's weird that he would be that old, 13 years old, get identified as autistic. No, it's not weird. If it's what you do, if you're a clinical practitioner, you do the testing and evaluation for autism, especially high functioning autism in girls. There's a traditional view of autism, but then we know that with certain other populations, they have a little bit of a different presentation. For Sebastian, being identified at 13, if his IQ is up around 120 or so, that's absolutely consistent with that population. And it doesn't mean that he's any less or more affected by the social communication challenges. It could be profound. So So this idea that this guy would take a belt to a 15-year-old boy, if there's nothing else you need to know, it's that, was he even the slightest bit worried about Sebastian's confidence, his identity as a man, who would one day become a man? Is this guy, Chris, building up Sebastian, his identity as a man? No, he's putting him in his place, because Christopher is having trouble with what it means to be a man. He understands full well what it means to be an abuser, I think, based on information from 2 or more people. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Sir Anthony Hopkins was diagnosed in his 70s or 80s. Diagnosis can be at any time. Michelle, I worked with a university, a medical school in the Department of Psychiatry, and the university has a special program for adults that are on the spectrum, and we would write like educational modification plans for college students. I've written recommendations to include having a support help meet the patient at the bus when they would get off the bus in the morning, walk with them into the classroom, let them sit in the classroom, get their education, and then escort them back to the bus to go home. There's any manner of modifications that we can do with adults that are on the spectrum. So you're absolutely right. It is not uncommon for a 20 or 30-year-old to get a diagnosis of autism. And she's 100% correct about this idea of someone being 50, 60, 70 years old getting this particular diagnosis. And the reason is because it's only been in the last 20 years or so that we've really gotten a really good handle on what autism actually is. For many years, autism was synonymous with, the term at the time was mental retardation. Now we say that it's intellectual disability. That is absolutely not true at all. There are absolute people, the people that are diagnosed as autistic, if you look at the array of IQ scores, it is an exact match for the array of IQ scores in the general population, the people at large. It's that standard bell curve, and it's there whether there's autism diagnosed or not. So it doesn't have anything to do with whether you're smart or not. What I'm trying to communicate is that Sebastian wasn't identified until he was about 12 or 13 years old. That tells me that he is very high function, and his IQ is probably, it's at least 100, probably going toward 120 would be my guess. And that as long as the curriculum was very fact-based, he was perfectly fine. But add in abstraction, and that is something that is a particular skill that people that are on the spectrum really struggle with neurologically. And there are modifications, there are workarounds, so that the person can continue to be educated in the least restrictive environment possible, right? All right. Lavina says, everything she is saying is true. I have a special needs child. It takes a lot of patience and love. My child doesn't talk, and we love our kids. Absolutely, Lavina. Absolutely. Totally agree. I've seen little kids before that are nonverbal. They do not speak. They're very intelligent. They're smart. They can learn. They make good grades. But I've seen many of these kids who will take like a stuffed animal, and as long as that stuffed animal is up in front of their face, they'll talk like the stuffed animal is doing the speaking. Part of working with kids that are nonverbal is we start by talking to them like the kid would be on one side of the door and I would be on the other side of the door. So the kid's not even in the room with me, right? And if he'll talk or she will talk to me through the door, Once that happens, then we progress a little bit further until we open the door up a few inches, and then open the door a few inches more. And little by little, then sooner or later, we're both sitting in the same room, but I will have my back to the little kid. And all of this is allowing that child to develop skills for communication using relaxation until they can finally sit face to face and have a conversation with someone. So I can't impress upon you the impact of having a stepfather take off a belt or make you go find a belt, to take the belt and hit you. And I don't like the way that Christopher says, I hit him one time above his blue jeans on the buttocks. I don't like that. And here's the reason why, because it's not really how people talk. If you are innocently believing that hitting your child is really the only thing that you could do, you wouldn't feel like you had to qualify what you did. We only begin really qualifying things if we did something that we know was in the wrong, or if we're having accusations, we may do the same kind of thing. So Cheyenne's son was diagnosed at 30. There you go. We know much more about it. We know people that have high IQ. They can very often have these communication problems, but at the time that they would have been in elementary school, we did not know that at the time. And so that's why we do, in fact, get people older that get diagnosed right now today. It's absolutely true. Yeah, I think he was in a rage. I think when he hit Sebastian with the belt, he was in the middle of an adult temper tantrum. And that's why he felt the need to qualify in a strange way. I hit him on the buttocks, on top of his blue jeans. And then so we're already feeling uncomfortable about this because we're going, that's so strange the way he's describing that. It's way too much detail, out of line with the interviewer and the energy that Chronicles of Olivia brought to the interview. She did a great job. She was very respectful and very relaxed. And it was very odd that he felt the need to clarify, to qualify this action. It's very strange. And then he goes to Nancy Grace. They go to get interviewed on Nancy Grace after having lied about Nancy Grace. Remember that? Oh, we didn't get invited. Oh, Nancy Grace did not invite us on her show. And of course, all of us in the true crime community, we're laughing because we're going, well, of course, Nancy Grace invited you. That's right up her alley. She would want you there. That's crazy to say she didn't invite you. I truly think he was fighting with Katie and hit Sebastian at that time. Yeah, maybe, Megan. Yeah, and that's going to bring me to the next point that I'm going to make. I do believe that they were probably separated. I think some of the oddities that we've seen in their interviews are curious, and I think they may have been separated during this period of time. And what do we know about domestic violence and divorce? When do domestic violence, domestic abusers, when do they get angry and attack? They get angry and attack when they perceive that they are being dumped. So I think it's important to know, to take account that it does seem they may have been separated during the period of time that Sebastian went missing. That could be totally wrong. That is 100% wild speculation on my part, but maybe it's possible. It's weird about how long he'd been gone. Did he come back and visit? You know, it's very, very strange. I also thought it was, I mean, this is inconsequential, but I also thought it was very odd the way he said that, you know, he told Katie, okay, well, put the puppies up. You can go to bed now. What? You've got her on a camera watching her, and you're determining what time this woman can go to bed at night? Very uncomfortable. The fact that Katie ends up completely isolated from the people in her family, again, odd, strange. All the red flags for domestic abuse. It's all there. All right. Mr. Chris Sir is a blackberry in martial arts. And he looks like a little roly-poly berry. Black belt. Okay. What I don't get is a man or woman separate and get into a relationship right away. The main one is the child is being pushed back and forth. The mother and the stepdad never showed love. I don't know about, showing affection or love or anything, but just going only by what this man and woman have said in multiple interviews, I'm pretty heated. I feel a lot of, I feel a need of, like, a protective need for Sebastian. And I think these games that this guy is playing is gone on enough. And what I mean is this. He went on multiple interviews. He said, I asked him if he had his belt. He said no. I told him to go get his belt, and I used the belt to hit him. The way that this came to be with CPS is that little Sebastian, he goes to school. He's in a special classroom. He's so affected by his autism. He's intelligent. He's got a high IQ, but socially, he's really affected. And I haven't really heard anybody talk very much about how verbal Sebastian might be if he were to be confronted with a stranger. Would he be able to talk, or would he put his head down? Like, what? That would be something I'd be interested in knowing, because some of these kids are verbal with their parents or with the people at school that they know. But if somebody new comes in, they won't make eye contact. They won't talk to them. So that's not really been clarified yet. But I think if anyone knows, I would welcome, that information. And so then when we fast forward to Nancy Grace's interview, we get meek, weak little Chrissy Poo showed up in his interview with Nancy Grace. I thought that was incredibly interesting. Where did Mr. Chris Sir, where did he go? Like, why is it that when Nancy Grace does the interview, how come Mr. Chris Sir didn't show up? Why is it that during the Nancy Grace show, what we got was Chrissy Poo? Can anybody explain that? Like, what happened for this dramatic shift in personality? It's quite curious. I mean, it did, Christopher, because we all know you're listening. It did reveal you to be the abusive coward that you are, because that is what most abusers do. That if they get in the midst of someone with equal power, then you tuck your little tail between your legs and run off, yelping. Nancy's mean to me. I don't want Nancy Grace to be mean to me. Help, 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 help. So Mr. Chris Sir may be a fraud, Mr. Chris Sir may just be a mask hiding Chrissy Poo, right? Domestic abuse hotline. Thank you, Cinnamon Hot. It is right there. I hope all of you will take a minute and just jot it down and keep it right there with your phone, just in case. So we fast forward to Nancy Grace's interview, and this jackass, he's got a whole new story now. So apparently he can't proclaim with pride and a little teeny tiny heart-on. He can't reply, like when he's talking to Chronicles of Olivia, who I think is an incredibly talented young woman, but she's not really very forceful, personality-wise, not forceful. I think Chris felt like he had the upper hand. And so he was being a big shot. He was getting a sexual thrill out of talking about how firm he is and how brash he is and how tough he is. There's a whole different ball game, you see, when you go with somebody like Nancy Grace, because she's a grown-ass woman and she knows what in the hell she's talking about. So Mr. Crisser turned into Chrissy Poo. And when Nancy Grace said, oh, wait a minute, did you hit Sebastian? I've heard that that's a thing. Did you hit him? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I did. It was so long ago. It was a long, it was 30 years ago, Nancy. And I only hit him once, and it wasn't very hard. It was just a little tap, and I just felt so bad, Nancy. I just felt so bad. I just love that boy so much. You're full of it, Chris. When you get on the Nancy Grace show, you tell this fantasy fairy tale that doesn't even remotely parallel to what you told the other interviewers. Oh, it happened so long ago, years ago. I only ever hit him once, just once. Why? So can you tell me, Chris, why you hit a little kid with autism? Because if it happened years ago, then he wasn't a 15-year-old going through puberty. He was actually a little small child. If what you're saying was years ago, then he was just a little kid. Now, instead of you hitting a 15-year-old who's going through puberty and developing a man's body, that's bad enough all by itself because the kid's on the spectrum. But now you're willingly telling Nancy Grace and the entire world, you took a belt to a child? You took a belt to a child with autism? Chrissy Poo, do you have any idea what a jackass you are? That story that you only hit him once with the belt, that is not true, Chrissy Poo. Taking a weapon to a kid doesn't happen the first time out of the gates. You know what I mean? You got to go around the track a few times, getting used to violence against little kids before you feel like, oh, this time I'm going to get him. This time I'll get him. I got to have a weapon. You jerk. You are a horrible human being. So we're all upset. We're also upset thinking about Sebastian being mistreated. Now we find out, but from the words of Seth Rogers, the father who has not given up on his son at all, the man who is walking the walk and talking the talk, he is 100% all in on finding his child. And from his own words, now we know the truth, don't we, Katie? You guys threatened Sebastian. You told him not to tell his dad what was going on. And my guess, and the people that are special education teachers, people that may be therapists or even doctors, my guess, based on what we know, what we've seen, my guess is that what happened is Christopher told Sebastian, if you ever tell anyone, I am going to hurt your mother. If you ever tell anyone that I hit you, I'm going to kill your mother. Do you understand me? And when you are a little kid being brutalized, you believe that message. Plays out in the houses all over every day. And if the system works, sooner or later, the reality is unveiled, usually by a school teacher, and then they're able to get that child to safety. But Sebastian wouldn't tell Seth. He would say, I don't want to go back home. I don't want to go to mom's house. I want to stay here with you. And of course, Seth's hands were tied because there's court ordered. And he would say, you have to go back. Can you tell me what's going on? Are you scared to go back? What's happening? And Sebastian would not communicate that. Now, was he unable to communicate the violence because of the autism? Possibly. It also could have been that he had been threatened to keep his mouth shut. So the idea that somebody would take the writings that Katie Proudfoot did as she is divorcing from Seth, you just sour grapes. She's being dumped. She's being left behind. She's mad, right? She writes things to try to get things from the court to make things look better with the court, to make Seth look like he's the bad dude. And somebody got a hold of these and read them on YouTube to balance the playing field. I guess the great philosopher told her that that was a good thing to do. It was not. It was actually a terrible thing to do, because Seth, if you judge Seth's behavior compared to Katie's behavior since Sebastian went missing, Katie's done nothing. Well, at this point now, she's gotten in a truck and gone to Mississippi to camp out with no worry that her child may return home and be afraid because mom's not there to greet him. That's very bizarre for all of us, our mothers, you know. We do have proof, excited utterance. Yes, there is proof. Now, Seth has not ever stopped looking. He has gotten people to come help. We know now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Christopher Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot lied bald-faced to Nancy Grace. They gave the impression that it was they who had organized, had gotten the Cajun Navy to come help look for Sebastian. We know now that is absolutely 100% wrong. It was Seth, and it was always Seth. Nobody else asked. It was Seth that did that. And other people came to help search at Seth's behest. Never Katie and Christopher, not a single one of Christopher Proudfoot's little buddies showed up to search for that boy. Not one. But in a very strange, odd shift in the force, one single moment in time, something strange happened. Katie and Christopher left town, went to Mississippi. Christopher's mom and dad show up. They're living in Katie's house now. And they are all, now there's all these men in town that are following the searchers around, taking video, taking pictures of their car license plates, asking about their names. And then ultimately it led to a crescendo of basically threats of physical harm to the searchers. And this was all turned into TBI. This is all coming out. I don't believe in coincidences. I don't think it's a coincidence that as soon as Christopher's mom and dad show up in town and they take off and leave town and all the death threats start and chasing people around, searchers around, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it looks to me like a coordinated effort. That was a campaign, a counter campaign. They have not wanted anyone searching since the beginning of this. And then just like a couple of people came in, they said, well, do we have proof of this? Like all these things that we're talking about, is there proof? Yeah, there's proof. The cops are perfectly aware of this. These things that I'm talking about happened on various interviews that are out there. Some of it is mainstream media interviews. Some of it is just interviews with podcasters. But all of this is all coalescing into a one solid picture that you can look at. And then something very critical happened yesterday or the day before yesterday. And that is Faith. Faith is the daughter, the biological daughter of Christopher Proudfoot. Oh, yes, you would be right if you say, but Jules, is that like another CPS case? Actually, a couple of them. So wrap your head around this for a second, y'all. Stop, excited utterance. Quit. You don't have to come in here and act like I'm doing something wrong. Every single thing I'm saying came out of this joker, this clown, out of his mouth. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible that the stupidity that he and Katie showed going on so many different platforms, doing so many different interviews, absolutely lying. It's incredible what they did. It's absolutely incredible. And now we have, think about this. We have two children. There's Faith and there's Sebastian. We have two states. We have New Mexico and we have Tennessee. And we have multiple CPS cases in Tennessee and in New Mexico. This guy is going around getting CPS cases opened up on him like I would open up a damn wrapper on a Snickers bar. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And so then we were provided this. All right. Now, this is, I got it. Hold on. Okay. So this is Nina Gomez. And Nina Gomez, excited utterance. Nina Gomez is Christopher Proudfoot's ex-wife. Yeah, you have a great day too, excited utterance. Now you leave because now it's not about defaming Christopher Proudfoot. Now the truth comes out. There's proof here about everything I've been saying, but you only like to come in and do virtue signaling, don't you? I think there's other names by which you are known. So this is Nina Gomez, and she is the mother, the biological mother of Faith. She was legally married to Christopher Proudfoot, right? And well, this excited utterance, she just sides with any criminal. It doesn't matter. If they're criminal, she likes them. Her virtue signaling comes by, how dare you say anything mean against that person? You don't know. You don't know if he is an abuser. You're such a bad person. You're an awful person. And it really doesn't matter who it is. Like, she loved Christopher Watts. She thought Chris Watts was great. He was great. Barry Morphew, whoo, she loved Barry Morphew so much she buddied up with his family members. That's how much which is hard to do all the way from Australia. Eh? All right, now then. He has said so many times, recorded different settings, he said that he hit this kid over and over and over. over and over and over. Okay. All right. Now then, this person right here. This is Nina Gomez. I'm sure most of you have probably seen this. Let's do it this way. If you have not seen Nina's interview, put a 1, because I think most people by now, they actually have seen it. You know what? I think she has gotten a lot of it in the past. I think she's one of those who's had a great deal of it, because there's, on her own channel, she tells you all about how she overcame drug addiction and all that. All right. Even the dog didn't like Mr. Chris, please. Yeah, sir. Mr. Chris, sir. Yeah. Okay. So Ave Renee has seen it. I don't know if other people have, but let me just give you a trigger warning, okay? This is you, what you are going to see here is you are going to see what trauma looks like. I know a lot of people say that they're dealing with trauma and they're struggling, you know. It's different when you see acute trauma that's ongoing at the time, as compared to PTSD, where the trauma occurred sometime in the past and now you're beginning to work through it, feeling better. This is different when you see where it's actually exerting a great deal of powerful force. You will be able to feel the desperation and the regret that this woman is currently, right now as we speak, she's currently being assaulted and attacked by Chris Proudfoot. Currently, right now, today, he's trying to take her little girl from her. So I just I'm just giving you trigger warning here. This is very powerful. Very, 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 very powerful. Okay. Now, the other thing is, mods, if y'all will please just put the link for this video. The person is Trev Time. If you watch The Lab, then you might know who Trev Time is. I think he's friends. That's common for him to be on The Lab. He's the one that got this interview. And so please, just like you saw, hit the subscribe button, go back. I'm going to kind of pick and choose as we go through this video. I'm not going to play the whole interview. So I hope that you'll go back, you'll watch the whole interview on his channel, you'll subscribe to his channel. He is growing. He's got nearly 10,000 subscribers, and this was a big deal. But it's also one of those videos not to just play to get views off of. It's one of those videos. I don't know why. I guess I'm on a different account. I guess it's one of these videos that everyone needs to see, especially now, because Christopher Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot have been so dishonest. They've been so dishonest. They've done all of these various interviews. They've contradicted themselves and each other multiple times. They've made it about anything other than Sebastian and what really happened on February the 25th. They're not telling the truth, y'all. But we've known that. We could feel it. We could feel it in our soul, right? We knew. But now we know. When you watch this, you will know what the truth is. And at this point, another reason why it's so important to get this out for everybody to see is because Christopher Proudfoot's world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. As facts come out, as the truth is unveiled and revealed through interviews like this, through court documents, that sort of thing, as that happens, then he will begin to feel the pressure. I have to tell the truth. Someone has to tell the truth. And Christopher and Katie, I'm sure you're going to eventually watch this because, I mean, it is, after all, about you. You got to know this. The person that talks first, the person that goes to the cops and tells the truth first, they get the better deal. So the world is getting tighter. It's getting smaller around you. And whoever goes and tells the truth first, you're going to have a better time of it in terms of how the next few years of your life play out.
I remember one point in time where Christopher spanked my son really hard, and I got very upset with him, and I said, you can't do that to my son. I said, he's 3, he's a baby still. Like, you can't just do whatever you want. I mean, and he got upset, and he's like, well, you know, he needs to learn. He needs to man up. He's a man. I said, he's 3.
All right. So Christopher Proudfoot is hitting someone else's kid. He's hitting this child who is 3 years old. It's not his son. It's a son that is her child by someone else. But he hits this baby, a 3-year-old baby, and he says the baby has got to man up. He's the male child, so he has to be a man. Well, golly, where did our little friend go? Our little virtue signaling, weirdo who loves to side with these abusers. Where'd she go? I guess she didn't want to see the truth. All she wanted to do was say that I was slandering Mr. Proudfoot. Golly, gee whiz. Where'd she go? I guess she didn't want to see truth. Oh, do you have any proof? You're slandering them. You know where this comes from? This comes from that idiot, the great philosopher, who tells everybody, oh, I will tell you who the bad actors are. I am so much more intelligent than the bad actors in the true crime community. We should fight back against them. They're very bad people, but I'm very smart and I will. Well, you know what? He gets up there, the scientific skeptic, he gets up there and he has like little pet words that he likes to say, talking about different theories and such, and tries to make himself look smart and all that. And so I triggered him to hell and back because I started asking him questions about his little theory that he put out that no one was understanding. The only person that would understand that would be someone like a sociology major. Nobody knew what he was talking about. But he was just talking so important and so special and big. And then when I started asking him questions to explain it more, oopsie, he couldn't do that. And my name was Mud. I was a bad actor. Okay, now that all that pettiness aside. So our little friend ran away, not here anymore now that we actually have the wife that here telling the truth that this idiot, Christopher Proudfoot, hit a 3-year-old little boy, not his child, another person's child, not his child. He hits a 3-year-old, she says, very hard. And he says, well, he's got to learn how to be a man. You know what, Christopher? You are a clown.
He's 3. And as time went on, like, I could see him getting more aggressive and more aggressive. And I stood up for my kids all the time. I didn't like how he, like I said, how he talked to them, how he wanted them to stand in the corner all the time. And I didn't like that. So I stayed a little bit longer. I ended up eventually getting pregnant with Faith. And it was probably, I want to say, maybe early September that I found out that I was pregnant with Faith. And I remember telling him that I was pregnant, and he wasn't happy about it. So I called my parents back home here in Albuquerque, and I told them the situation. And I said, well, Christopher wants me to get an abortion with Faith. And my parents said, no, you're not. And I said, I'm not. So I know he was very upset about me keeping Faith at that point in time.
So the guy,
So
this is his wife.
I
Right?
came
At
home,
the time that all this is
my
happening,
grandma had gotten.
they are married. She's got 2 kids of her own before they marry. Okay, that's where the 3-year-old little boy comes from. That she's telling the story before she is pregnant with Faith, the little girl. She has this 3-year-old baby, and he is beating on this child to a point that she is weeping, and she's saying, you can't do this, you cannot hit that. He's a baby, he's 3. And this idiot, his response is, oh, well, he's got to be a man, he's got to learn how to be a man. Does this make any sense to any of you? Let's do this. If you think this makes sense, then I want you to type, Chris is right. If you think this is from the mind of an idiot, then I want you to write, Chris is an idiot. And I'll just wait. Chris sucks. That works too. If you think that you can take a 3-year-old little boy and beat him in order to turn him into a man, then Chris is right. If you think that that just sounds like good old-fashioned child abuse, then Chris is an idiot. I want you to make your vote. Is Chris right or is Chris an idiot? Shalimar. That's my Texas friend. This is a good one. I agree with that. Diane, yes, ma'am. Okay, so I think he gets the point. Chris, you got to be a special kind of something to really and truly like the idea that you legitimately beat up a 3-year-old and then said, well, he's got to learn to be a man. What is wrong with you, Chris? What in the hell is wrong with you? Well, we're going to find out in a little while why Christopher Proudfoot is a jerk. It may or may not have something to do with his daddy being a jerk.
Very sick. And I decided to come home. And after that, I just kind of stayed here in New Mexico, because at that time we weren't getting along and we were just like newlyweds, and that should have never happened. But I saw things, like I said, that were just, it wasn't right about him. So I moved home and I did my whole pregnancy by myself. And so I finally, my friends back there in California, my neighbors right across the street were actually calling me. I had one good friend, which is still a really good friend of mine to this day. She called me and said, Nina, Christopher's getting rid of your furniture and getting rid of your stuff. And I was like, what? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, he's giving away like your little, your home decor stuff. Like
So all this is happening in California, I believe. And she leaves and goes home because he's just abusive. And he's telling her that she has to abort her child. And she is just freaked out. Like she just thinks, what in the world is happening here? And so she leaves and she goes back to her mom and dad in New Mexico. And while there, the lady that lives across the street calls her and says, Christopher Proudfoot is like getting everything out of your house and selling it and giving it away to people and just basically emptying all of your things, just getting rid of them. And so she's in amazement, right? Fun fact, it's time for the fun fact moment. Christopher Proudfoot was actually in the United States Navy. How crazy is that? I have so much respect for the military and the armed forces, the police officers, have such respect for these people. Wonder what his little friends from the military, I wonder what they would think if they knew that he was hitting a 3-year-old little boy and telling that 3-year-old little boy to man up. I got a feeling most of them would laugh their asses off at him.
Fact that they heard Christopher over the phone on how he was being disrespectful to the nurses that were on call that night, as I was waiting to have her. And I asked that they know.
So we have now fast forwarded to a different part of the video. I've already told you I'm not going to play this all the way through. You need to go to Rev's channel, Trev Time. Go to his channel and subscribe and watch the whole video. I'm just picking out little parts to comment on. So at this part now, she's gone through her whole 9 months. She's now in the hospital in labor. And this clown of a man, like, I don't know what, I really don't know if, I cannot think of a better description other than he's just a clown. He's a jokester. He's ridiculous person. The beating on kids, it's terrible. It's really, really terrible. So that's what I mean when I say a clown of a man. So she is now, Nina Gomez is now having her baby that she had to fight for because Christopher Proudfoot was trying to make her have an abortion. She actually split up, refused to live with Chris because she felt like that was the only way she could save her baby. So now she's in the hospital. She's in labor. She's by herself. He gets wind of this somehow. I don't know if she tells him or what happens. He calls up to the hospital, and guess what he does? I know that you guys are all going to be in total shock. He begins insulting the nurses. He begins telling the nurses and the medical staff what he wants, what they are going to do for him, because that's his wife having his baby. Now, he doesn't tell them that he just wanted the baby to be aborted. So if they could just go ahead and get rid of him right now, then that would make him happy. He didn't tell them any of that. Suddenly, he becomes daddy of the year. And he is asserting his rights of ownership over Nina and the baby. Does this sound like a domestic abuser to anyone? Are there red flags anywhere in her story?
Not give him any more information. So he arrived. I had faith. He arrived a couple days later, like I said. And you could just tell the look on his face, like he wasn't happy at all. Like, didn't say, hey, you did a good job. Didn't say, I'm so happy that you brought my daughter into this world, like nothing. And I remember my sister was holding Faith, and she had to ask Chris, do you want to hold her? He said, I guess. So she handed her over to Chris. And he stayed there with me for a couple more days because I had a C-section. And on one of the occasions, I can't recall what was happening, but he was raising his voice and he was talking to me very disrespectful in front of one of the nurses. And she had told him, look, she just brought life into this world. She just got major surgery and you're yelling at her. And I have a problem with that.
This woman is in the hospital recovering from a C-section with his child. He is literally in her hospital room yelling at her, screaming at her in the hospital so that the nurses come in like, what the hell is going on in here? The same guy who hits a 3-year-old little kid and says he has to learn to man up.
She said, if you continue to do this, I'm going to have to tell social services to come down here and I'm also going to have to ask you to leave the hospital and not return. So at that point in time, he kind of calmed down after he heard that. But unfortunately, that didn't last very long. He continued to do that. So social services at the hospital was told to come down, and he was pretty much, she said, you can't do that here.
We got another CPS engagement. Christopher, you are a trip, man. You seem to be so out of control emotionally that when you are doing this, when you are controlling people, you don't seem to be aware that you are crossing some serious boundaries. I mean, even if you want to stand by your right to abuse your child and abuse your wife, are you so dumb that you don't realize that yelling at your pregnant or your now, recuperating wife just had a C-section, she's still convalescing in the hospital, and you're yelling at her? Are you just dumb, or are you just so completely out of control that you just don't see that what you're doing is wrong? I can't even wrap my mind around it. But I'll tell you this, Chris, your world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you think that Nina is the only one coming out with stories about you, you would be wrong, because there are more stories coming, Mr. Chris, sir. All I got to say is this: the one who talks first, the one who tells their story first to law enforcement, that's who's going to get the better deal. Are you listening, Katie?
The NBC suites down here. Then his mom came up with an idea. She goes, well, since you guys, will be moving to Hendersonville. And I was like, I felt like, okay, well, maybe. And he's like, well, you'll get help. You're going to get help from my family. And, but I was already getting help here from my parents, with my other two children that they helped me raise. So that I went along with it. Like I said earlier, even though I knew it was wrong to go, I still went hoping that my marriage would work out.
And I recognize that some people find that hard to believe, okay? They think, if this guy's already done so many horrible things, what would make a woman stay with him? What would make a woman follow him? Well, this does in fact happen, where some of the worst abuse will happen while a woman is pregnant or immediately after. And part of it is this: you've got to realize that her body at the time all this is happening, her body has just been through 10 months of 40 weeks of pregnancy. Then she goes through labor and delivery. In this case, she went through labor, and then ultimately they had to do a C-section. But her brain is flooded during this period of time. Her brain is flooded with something that we call the bonding chemical. It's a special kind of neurohormone or neurotransmitter that causes us to feel attached to the person that we're with. So when pregnant women, when they go through labor and delivery, as they are breastfeeding, their brain generates an increased amount of oxytocin, right, with the bonding chemical or the attachment hormone. So she's got this newborn baby, and she's trying to figure out how to manage. And because she's got all this bonding chemical, attachment chemical in her brain, she's feeling this belief that all they got to do is just make a home together and then he'll love her again. That that now that the baby has come, he loves the baby. Everything's going to be okay as long as they can make a home together. And that's what causes the critical misstep for some women. They make these decisions to stay with a man who has a history of abuse. They make this decision when they're pregnant or when they have this new baby. And it's, tough. And then you'll follow those same women. And when they get to be around 6 months, the baby gets to be about 6 months, 10 months, they just like, you know what? Screw you, sucker. And they'll leave and make them a great life. But Pitocin, oxytocin, it's a powerful chemical, and it does cause a sense of attachment.
So she ended up taking Faith, although I was against it. Kathy Bowers-Hawks and her brother Duran ended up taking Faith. And my mom and dad were like, my mom started crying and she goes, "Why are you letting them take the baby?"
Her newborn baby. Christopher's mom and stepdad, the one that followed JLR, that stalked searchers, that took pictures of license plates, they took her newborn baby, the same baby that Christopher really fought to make her abort. Same baby. This is a pattern of torture, people. This is torture. And it continues today.
And I said, because Christopher said that it's going to be too hard for her to travel, to travel. And I'm sorry. They went back. So Kathy and Big D went back to Tennessee. So 2 weeks later, about 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks later, Kathy ended up coming back by herself. I do apologize. She came back by herself to pick up Faith. She was here in Albuquerque for one night, and I was, even though I was against it, I let her go with Kathy, because Christopher said it was going to be too hard to travel with her being a new baby. So he came out from San Diego.
He's manipulating her. He's setting her up.
Rented a U-Haul, packed all our stuff, and we pretty much left. And that's how I ended up in Hendersonville, Tennessee. That's when my whole life changed. That's when
listen, I know that many of you are watching this and you're thinking, why is she crying? The child is older. She's not even married to him anymore. Why? She's too emotional. No. She was subjected to systematic abuse by this jackass with little man syndrome. And he stole her newborn baby, stole it, isolated her, so she had no support, stole her baby. She had no idea what she was going to do, threatened her life, threatened the life of her other 2 children. And it continues today. Right now, today, as you and I are watching this video with alarm, as we look at this, wiping tears from our own eyes because this woman is clearly in distress, that short, tiny little man is trying to steal her daughter from her. He is using the legal system. He has subjected her, her mother and her father, to hell on earth, trying to steal the daughter that he wanted her to abort. This is not a woman that is unbalanced. This is not a woman that's crazy. This is not a woman with a personality disorder. This is a woman who has been systematically traumatized. And right now, today, she is in fear of losing her child to this monster. This is a powerful, strong woman who is telling her truth.
My nightmare happened. We lived with his mother and his stepfather, Terry, for about a good month because our apartment wasn't going to be ready until the end of August, about the end of August. So it was really uncomfortable living there. You know, Terry and Kathy would always bicker at each other, and she'd be bickering with Christopher. And, you know, my kids were a problem, an issue. It was always something. I felt really uncomfortable and I wanted to come home. I just wanted to come home to everything that I knew. I wanted my mom and my dad, even though I was a grown woman. I needed that.
And anyone who's been subjected to these abusive assholes, you recognize right there the tears, her kind of taking on a childlike persona for a moment. You know that, don't you? If you've lived with one of these domestic abusers, you know that moment where all you're feeling is, I need my mom and dad. I am in trouble here. I need protection. I don't know what to do to help myself. I don't know what direction to turn. I need my mom and dad. This doesn't mean there's something wrong with her. This doesn't mean that she's a crybaby. It doesn't mean she has a personality disorder. And all of these are things that Christopher Proudfoot and his mother have said about her. This is me and you, given the same set of circumstances, having to live with this jackass, we would be also asking for our mom or dad. This is a woman who has faced systematic abuse over and over and over again, and she continues to be tormented, and she is fighting for the life of her child. Can you imagine, as you listen to these stories, can you imagine the thought of this woman having to let her baby girl go live with this asshole? A court ordering her? There should be prayers and compassion for this lady, nothing else.
So we all had to get along, tried to for the most part, but it was just an awkward situation. I always felt like we were the outcast. Never felt accepted by the Proudfoots or the Bowerslocks. On one occasion, Christopher was cutting my oldest daughter's nails, and she didn't want her nails cut. And Christopher, you know, grabbed a hold of her hand and she pulled her hand away. And my daughter at the time had braces. He backhand Isabel in the face and busted her whole lip open.
He backhanded her because she didn't want her nails clipped. He hit a 3-year-old little boy and told him to man up. And he used a weapon against Sebastian because Sebastian didn't wear his belt. He has multiple CPS cases in multiple states involving multiple children. Thank you, Desired. I have two. Thank you.
I should
Enough
have
is
left,
enough with the virtue signaling crap.
but I didn't. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't be here. I don't want to be here anymore. So I would come up with every excuse just to come home, but yet, I couldn't come home. So finally we went and we moved into the apartment.
Oh, they have
And
camping. They're out there.
a phone call, like as soon as Christopher was leaving, he settled us in, got a storage unit of what couldn't fit in the apartment. He got everything ready, all right? Him and his family. As soon as he knew that we were comfortable, he left back to San Diego.
So the question is, why wouldn't she reach out to CPS or the police while these things are going on? Well, this is a sad truth. While CPS and the police are dealing with kids that have cigarette burns on them, or they've been, pushed down into a bathtub as the bathtub is filled with nothing but scorching hot water, as they're dealing with kids that have broken arms and legs and whatnot. These kids that are subjected to emotional torture, these kids, they fall through the cracks. And it is a rare thing, even in the case of this little girl getting backhanded with a bloody lip, they're not going to remove that child from the home. Because you got kids that are within, a heartbeat or two of death, that we don't have any available beds for them. We don't have any available special placement foster care. The system is overrun. So even if she had reached out, even if she had called, and we don't know that she didn't, she may have. But even in that situation, it still would not have removed Christopher Proudfoot from the lives of those children. That can only happen when the mother leaves. And when you do that, these types of abusive, toxic, narcissistic, aggressors, they stalk you, they find you, and they hurt you. It is a nightmare scenario to get hooked up with one of these guys and not be able to get out. And I got to tell you, I said before, I think Katie Proudfoot looks frightened. In the first interview that she did, she looked scared. She kept looking at him to see, it looked like she was checking in to see if she was saying the right thing. Now, the newest interviews, I think the interview with Nancy Grace, I think Katie looked pissed. I think she looks angry. She wouldn't even look at Chris Proudfoot in the second to last interview. I'm telling you, Katie, go to the police, tell it. Tell the whole story, Katie. Everything. Tell everything that's ever happened. Everything. Get this monster out of your life.
But the night prior to him leaving, he had got a phone call or text message that night, and it said something like, "Hey baby," or around something like that, saying that when is your flight coming in? And I was like, what? Like, who's texting him? So I did confront him. And like he said on one of the podcasts, is that I did slap him. Yes, I did slap him across the face, because who's he talking to at this time and saying, and he could say that she was lesbian, up and down, but I mean, at this point in time, I didn't know what to believe. And I was like, okay. So then after that following day, he finally left. His mother came to pick him up to take him to the airport. And he went back to San Diego. And I was left in Hendersonville with 3 children and pretty much no help from anybody. So I have found a job. I had a job, and Kathy helped once in a while. And I needed to find a babysitter. So his biological father, Michael, and his stepmother, Linda, at that point in time offered their services and said that, they can take care of my 2 older children. And Kathy didn't want Faith going over to Michael's house. So she took care of her. And at that point in time, Christopher, we were still communicating. And like I said, our marriage was on the rocks. So my oldest daughter had gotten sick, and she has upper respiratory issues. So I took her to the emergency room in Hendersonville, and that's when Hendersonville transferred her to Vanderbilt. Is that what I believe that hospital's name is? And I was kind of frantic because I was like, well, what am I going to do with my 3-year-old son and with the baby? Like, who's going to help me? So I was, I called Chris and I told him, I said, hey, can your mom watch, Faith, or can somebody help me? Everybody was so quick to help me at that point in time. So Faith stayed with Kathy, and Noah Bryce went with his sister Melissa, and I went with my oldest daughter. We got transported downtown, and so we stayed there. I can't recall how many days we were there. And Christopher had, I'd check on the kids, see how they were doing, and that point in time, I was like, okay, well, we got discharged, telling everybody, okay, you can bring Noah back, and telling Kathy, okay, I'm going to be home, so you can bring Faith back. Thinking that my children were going to come home to me. I get back to the apartment complex, and I pulled into the parking lot, and I see Melissa just pulled in right next to me. It seems like they were already there waiting for me to get there. And then she said, I can't stay. I would love to stay, but I can't stay because I don't know what they were doing. And she does, my son gets out of her van, and then we walk inside, and I was waiting, for Faith to get there. And we weren't there but less than maybe 5 minutes.
Now, this is her newborn baby.
And I hear a knock at the door. And I was like, oh, great, Faith is home. And it was Kathy's friend, Patty, that's an attorney. And she said, you called me by my real name, Gomez? And I was like, yeah. And she said, you've been served. She said, you have a protection order against you. You can't see Faith. And Chris is filing for divorce.
Are y'all hearing this? You think this is okay? You think this is a normal man? Her other daughter is hospitalized at Vanderbilt. She has to go be with her child in the hospital at Vanderbilt. And Christopher Proudfoot's mom agrees to take the baby, Faith, the same baby that he demanded that she abort. She says, no, 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 I'll take care of the baby. It'll be okay. And while this woman, Nina, is in the hospital with her daughter, who is very ill, trying to help take care of her, they are mapping out a plot to steal her infant. They kidnapped her infant using the law. But they didn't do it in New Mexico. They didn't do it in California. He got her back to Hendersonville, where they would be the big shots and they would have connections to the police. If there is anything in your stomach that makes you think that Christopher Proudfoot is a great guy, you are not paying attention. I wouldn't trust him as far as I could pick him up and throw him. Don't tell me, oh, it's okay. He was in Memphis the night that Sebastian went missing. Are you sure? Because 3 hours ain't nothing. Look at the Jodi Arias case. All he's got to do is go to his little hotel room that the company has for him in Memphis, leave his telephone there, get in a different vehicle, and make his way back to Hendersonville, do the dirty deed, and then head right back to his telephone. And it looks like he never went anywhere.
And I was like, what? So then I go back, and thinking like my heart just drops. Like, what? Like, is this a dream? Like, this can't be happening to me. Like, this cannot be happening to me right now. So then I get on the phone and I try calling Chris, and he didn't answer. And then I was like, rushing around, and I get my kids in the truck and I go to the Gallatin police department, and I, was ringing the call button. And like finally 30 minutes later, somebody shows up, and I told them what happened, and I showed them the paper, and they said, yep, we can't help you. All I can think about is my baby. Like, how am I gonna get my baby back? Like, why is this happening to me?
He is still doing it today. He continues to try and steal this woman's baby from her. That's what we're hoping for, Lindsay.
So I go to
We're hoping
Kathy's
that they will see this.
And I knock on the door. And I remember I had Christopher's stepmom, Linda, on the phone with me. She was on speakerphone, and I told her what was going on. Little did I know everybody was in on this. And Terry answered the door, which is Chris's stepfather. And he told me that I need to get off of his fucking property. No. And here's little Noah, who's 3 years old.
Now that is the man she's talking about right there. That is the guy that JLR came face to face with. He took a photograph of JLR's license plate and was yelling at JLR. That's the man that did this to her, what you're about to hear. So the apple don't fall far from the tree, does it, Christopher? You're a big, tough man like your stepdaddy. He beat the shit out of you the way you tried to go around and beat the children of your wives. Is that where you learned how to be a jerk?
And here's little Noah, who's 3 years old, and my Isabella's 7. And they're standing behind me. And I said, please tell me what's going on. I said, where's Faith? I said, please give me my baby back. And he told me, get off my fucking property. And he took out a green and black baseball bat. And he told me to fucking leave or he's gonna bash me and my kids' heads.
Yeah. Well, what else do you need to hear, cops? Does this look like a woman who's lying? This man takes a bat. They have just stolen her infant, hiding the baby away from her. She's got her sick daughter and her little son. And she says, please give me my baby back. I don't understand what y'all are doing. Like, what? Y'all said y'all would watch the baby because I had to take my daughter. She was in the hospital. What are you doing here? The man takes a bat and walks out toward her and says that he will bash her head in and the heads of her children. The only thing that I can say is thank you, Nina, for putting your truth out there. This is a nightmare. She watches and she sees that Sebastian is gone. And in her heart, she knows. To have to come out, she's got this fight trying to keep her children safe from this crazy man who's saying a 3-year-old little boy has to man up. We've all seen all the different interviews that he does. He looks like a totally different guy. He just lies in the spur of the moment. He doesn't even keep up with his stories at all. And now we get a reality check here. Stop this nonsense. Nina, I am just heartbroken for what you're going through. It is so sorry this is happening to you and your children and your parents. Just terrible. This guy, Christopher Proudfoot, I don't care. I wasn't there. I don't know if he did something to Sebastian. I don't know. But I know one thing. Whatever's going on inside that house where he and Katie Proudfoot lived, where Sebastian lived, it wasn't like my house or your house. That is a certainty. Don't judge him. Don't judge Katie according to what you and your husband do, because they ain't nothing like us. Are you listening to the words of this lady? Cops need to be all over this family, the whole bunch of them. Every one of them, in my opinion. Be careful about what side you get on. All right. So this interview, this is on Trev Times channel. He's very close to 10,000. You might want to subscribe to him, hit the thumbs up. The name of the video is Nina Gomez Speaks Out. She was the actual legal wife of Chris Proudfoot. She shares a biological child between them. And yes, there are multiple CPS court cases involving their daughter, but more importantly, he continues to try and steal her child, legally kidnap her child. So here's the link to Trev Time's channel, to that video. I would invite you all to go over and watch the video in its entirety. You can see we only watched just a small portion of it. Have a box of tissues with you. Christopher Proudfoot is not a good person, as his behavior in relationships seem to suggest. I don't know anything about him otherwise, only what has been made for public consumption. And it is absolutely devastating that he would try to force his wife to abort their child. And then when the baby's born, he has never stopped trying to steal the baby. Hell, he did steal her for a time. And she was able to get the baby back through an attorney. Listen to this. She got an attorney who felt sorry for her, that said, these assholes are really, this is bad what they're doing. And he fought for Faith with very little money. A good man, a very, very, very good man. And yet Christopher hasn't stopped. He's still coming at her and just torturous. You got to go listen to it. You got to go listen. You won't believe it. What Christopher Proudfoot is capable of, you will not believe it. And I'm not a bit scared saying this, because there's court documents. There's court documents. There's an attorney who saw it all. He's a bad person, y'all. He's a bad guy. He treats children horribly, horribly. That's why there are multiple CPS cases in different states. Not because someone's picking on him. All right, I got to go, because I cannot tolerate these jackasses like Christopher Proudfoot. I can't tolerate it. He's weak. He's ineffective. He knows that he is not worth anything. He knows it in his heart. That's why he uses all the bravado to act like he's such a big shot. The truth is, seems like he might have been brutalized by his family. Just saying. I don't know that to be true, but this grown grandpa with a bat threatening to beat in the head of his daughter and his stepdaughter, his daughter-in-law and his grandchildren-in-law. It's gross. It's gross. You're gross people. All right. I got to go outside and get some fresh air. Y'all have a good day. Bye.